computer. Okay, I think I am recording. So thank you guys for joining. I appreciate you taking the time to sit with Emily and I. The whole point of this is really to answer your questions and to be a resource for you as you are navigating, everything that is COVID-19. We are, I would say, I feel like we're in the middle of something. We have a long way to go before we're out of the woods. And I think there's going to be a lot of new normals that are being set. But I think, we're kind of starting to hit pace with where we're at today. And so I just want to give, people the opportunity to talk with us and ask questions. And there's been so much information that has gone out in the world over the last couple weeks. And a lot of it is confusing. A lot of it is still changing. With all the legislation that's come out, there are, people are interpreting it and implementing, but there remain a lot of guidance still coming out. So we're learning as we go through all of this, which is fine. But I think a lot of the webinars, give you a lot of information, but there's not a lot of ability to interact back and forth and ask the questions. So that's why Emily and I wanted to take some time and just really give you guys the opportunity to ask your questions and really kind of dig in and make sure that you have the understanding that you need in all the areas that you need it. So,
and
yes.
We will put this video up in various places. We'll put it up on, well, it's probably going to be too long to put up on LinkedIn, but we'll put it up on Facebook and we'll send you a link for YouTube. So when we send it out, please feel free to share it with anyone that you think needs this info. We just want to be able to get it out to folks who have questions, although there will undoubtedly be some that Erin and I can't answer either, because as she said, everything is changing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Emily and I, what we thought we would cover today are the questions that we have. And again, it's open to everybody and what they want to talk about. Certainly we wanted to break into furloughs and layoffs and the differences there as an employer, how you can kind of ease those transitions for employees as well. I of course wanted to talk about the different legislative acts, so the FFCRA, the Family First Act, and then the CARES Act, which obviously there's a lot going on there, will continue to be a lot going on there. And then there's questions around bringing people back. There's questions around how do I do accommodations when we start to get back to normal.
And so let me just pick it up here. Oh, there you are. Okay, you froze for a second there.
Oh, I'm so sorry, you guys. That will probably continue to happen. I apologize, but thank you, Emily, for letting me know. So we'll cover furloughs and layoffs, FFCRA, CARES Act, and some different pieces. So.
And on my side, I'm just going to really talk about kind of best practices, bearing in mind how stressful this time is for everyone. And so when employers do have to lay off or furlough folks, or even have to shut their doors permanently, just kind of some best practices for your staff, so that you can kind of maintain a reputation as an ethical business, a kind business, and the kind of place that really works very hard to do right by its staff, as well as not opening yourself up for legal action, that kind of thing.
For sure. So we'll take a quick minute. Most of you guys know me. So I'm Erin. I'm the founding partner of Eolus HR. I work with small businesses in all areas of HR and all capacities. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. And Emily, do you want to just real quickly talk about yourself?
Sure.
And we'll get
So my name is Emily Frank, and I am the owner and founder of Career Catalyst, which is primarily targeting individuals who are looking for new career paths. But I also have worked some with businesses looking to kind of make their practices as ethical as possible, do some diversity recruiting, and learn kind of better communication style and leadership within the organization.
Perfect. Okay, well, let's just start. I don't know if you guys have questions right off the bat that you want to ask. We can get started with that, or I can certainly start with some of the questions that I've received from clients over the last week or so.
And if you have questions, feel free either to unmute yourself and ask them, or just to type them into the chat. Either is completely fine with us.
Absolutely.
I can go with the first one that I have.
Perfect. Thank you, Tanya.
Fabulous.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So obviously I'm self-employed and I haven't filed my 2019 taxes. Do I need to include proof of wages from 2019 from the clients that did pay me on the business side of things? Or do I just send in my 2018 regular tax filing to prove my wages?
Sure. And that's for unemployment, did you say, right?
Correct. Or the
The
POA
PPP.
or PUA.
Sure. So in either respect, if you have not yet filed 2019, you can use your 2018 taxes to support the filing requirement. They may make adjustments once you file 2019. So there is that possibility that, come the end of the year, if what you filed in 2019 is more or less than what you filed in more than what you filed in 2019, they may make adjustments there. So be anticipatory of that. But they will accept 2018 taxes with the understanding that a lot of people haven't yet filed because of COVID.
And there are actually, if you're looking just to find some funds to kind of tide you over because of the state of things, and because most of us who are self-employed are not exactly bogged down with the client load here these days, there are a number of additional loans since the PPP and the EIDL are both kind of on pause right now as we wait for more funds. Different regions have additional funding options. And I know here in Denver, there are a lot through things like the SBDC. And for those, they don't need proof, but they do ask for a year-to-year difference in a single month. So you could, for instance, pick March and compare your March income 2020 to your March 2019. And they ask for things like the percentage of business loss you've had for that. And then there are some that are just kind of talking about how are you making a positive impact in your community. So look for some of those smaller loans and grants as well for any of those funding needs that we are all having these days.
That's a great point, Emily. And there are a lot of counties and cities inside of Colorado as well that are doing their own specific grants. I know the city of Westminster had one. I think it closed last week, but there are a lot of different cities inside of Colorado that are doing their own specific grants. So absolutely worthwhile to look into that. And if you need links to those different sites, let me know and we can send them to you. And also, since you brought up unemployment, I will just take a moment to address there's been a lot of questions around the $600 benefit and how that works and when it works. And there was a call this morning, and those benefits are going to be eligible up on the Colorado unemployment website today. They're hoping by noon. I think
add that.
Did I freeze again? There we go. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know where I cut off, but there is the unemployment website today will be up and ready for self-employed and gig economy workers to file unemployment. And with that, the $600 benefit, you will be eligible for that as being impacted by COVID-19. So there'll be filing instructions. You'll go on and file that. And that $600 will run, it's effective March 29th through July 25th. So you have a period of time in which you can draw that additional benefit to support you as you're trying to navigate your business.
And if you're outside of Colorado, check with your local SBA because, of course, different states are doing different things and the funding for each state is pretty different. So do check with your local SBA and let us know. See what we can, links we can post if you have very specific regional needs. I think I only know US info, so if you're in Canada, for instance, it's going to be a little bit tougher to find info, but we'll definitely do our best.
Absolutely. Tanya, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions? Anybody want to jump in and ask a question?
So I have a question. This is Carrie.
Sure.
I heard that the PPP and EIDL loans are out of money, and so I'm wondering what people do now, and if there's other programs out there, and if there will be more funding for that program.
Sure. So yes, to answer your question simply, they have reached capacity with their current funding, both PPP and the EIDL loans, which is the emergency loan through the SBA or grant. Those have reached capacity. They are considering opening up more funding for that. It has not been decided yet. In the meantime, what I would recommend people do, is get your documentation ready so that if they open those loans back up, you're able to jump in and apply quickly without having to gather documents. So really pay attention to what their requirements are, look at that, prepare them, those documents so that you're ready to go. And then to Emily's point earlier, also look at the different, there's a lot of different funds and a lot of different things that are coming out grant-wise that you can apply for. So there's also, I know there's a Main Street loan that is just, the people have been talking about. I don't know a lot about that yet. I will be digging in and learning and can supply more information as I get it. But there are a lot of different loan options out there through different cities, through different counties, different grant options. And you can go onto the SBA site. I believe they've got a lot of different loan options for you as well. And there's another site, I can't remember, it's a COVID business resource site that will also give a list of different grants and different loans that you can apply for through the COVID crisis. So Emily, out there?
Yes, keep on top of your local SBA as well, because that is likely where you're going to get updated information if and when there is more money released to kind of help us all overcome this problem. And also, if you are involved with any local chambers of commerce, they've also been, in my experience, very good about keeping people updated on the state of things. So just kind of keep your eyes peeled to see if and when additional funds do get released.
Absolutely. I will mention there's another, it's a tax credit. It's the, I'm going to look at my notes here so I get it, so I tell you correctly. It is the employee retention tax credit. You cannot use this tax credit if you are approved for a PPP loan, but if you're not, then you are able to use this tax credit. So it's not 100% forgivable loan, but it does give payroll credit back to you 50% for what you are, for your payroll and what you're trying to accomplish in keeping your employees on board. So there is that's a different tax credit program that you can apply for as well. And if you want more information on that, obviously I'm happy to go into detail and provide that information as well.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so any other questions right off the bat?
Erin, I actually had one from someone
Okay.
who wonders what changes if you are currently getting unemployment and then get a part-time job.
Sure. So if you are currently filing unemployment or drawing unemployment benefits because of a loss and you get a part-time job, you can still continue to file. It will just, when you go to file, they'll ask you if you've done any, performed any work and what your wages were, and they will manage your benefit accordingly. So if you're getting part-time hours, your benefit from unemployment will go down, but you can still draw from that unemployment. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. And I think Molly had a question as well.
Perfect.
I did. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. I had a client ask me about a 941 tax credit, showing that they would be able to have been infected first quarter of 2020 and compared their 941 to 2019 and be able to receive a tax benefit from that. Have you heard anything for the 941?
Molly, I have. I don't want to speak to it on this call only because I don't have the information right in front of me. I just talked to a CPA on, I think it was Thursday or Friday last week, and he was talking about 941 and the implications of that. But what I will do is I will send you that information that I received when we get off of this, and let me know if you have any questions. I don't want to talk about it too much here just because I don't want to misspeak what he said, and there's enough in my brain that I'm not 100% sure on with that without looking at my notes, if that's okay.
No problem. Yeah, I just didn't know if you've heard much because it's still kind of
Yeah.
foggy of what we've heard as well. So.
100%. Yeah, I'll shoot you over the conversation I had with the CPA, the notes that I took from him, and then we can always jump on a call and talk more if you want to do that.
Thanks. That's great.
Sure, of course.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there's talks about other stimulus programs coming out and rolling out, and how you'll have to be income qualified to qualify for those.
Mhm.
I know there's a lot of people in the healthcare industry that are working a lot of overtime right now because of the nature of the times. And so they are probably somewhat artificially inflating their salaries for the short term while they do that. And so they may not be eligible for those stimulus monies because of that. And so I don't foresee the economy recovering super quickly. And so is there any support for those people?
Sorry, you guys, I froze for a minute, but I think I understand Carrie's question, which was if the economy doesn't shift and change drastically, how are they going to be impacted by that? And can they apply for, somehow gain access to the stimulus money? So can you guys, okay, can you hear, I'm back.
You're back, yay.
I love Zoom, I'm so sorry. So here's what I will say is when they're looking at the stimulus money, they're drawing from previous year's taxes. So for example, the stimulus checks that just went out, oh my gosh, am I frozen again? Am I here? Am I back? I'm so sorry.
You for a sec there.
Okay, I'm gonna try,
You're mostly back.
I'm shutting down everything possible on my computer to see if it makes a difference. So I have nothing open now. Let's see if that helps. So what I was saying is that they're looking back at taxes, previously filed taxes to determine eligibility. So for example, if an employee, let's use myself as an example. They reviewed my 2019 tax returns because I had actually filed those tax returns, and that's what made me eligible or not eligible for those benefits. If you have not filed 2019 taxes, they will review 2018 taxes. So in regards to the stimulus for this year, that's what they will review and go off of, are either 2018 taxes or 2019 taxes. Now, it's kind of anybody's guess at this point how this will look as we move forward and how long this impact will go and what sort of potential stimulus there may be in the future. So if there is, if we get to 2021 and for some reason we're still navigating this, or there's a reoccurrence of this, and if there's another round of stimulus checks, then again, they will go off of the most recent filed taxes in order to review that. Did you guys catch that? Or did I?
There's a little glitch.
A little glitch, but did that make sense? Did you get most of that?
Yeah.
Does it kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I think it goes both ways. I think there's people who have a lot of overtime every year, that overtime may not always be available for them in the current situation, be that shift workers or restaurant employees or things like that. Or so I think it cuts both ways. I think you have people who right now are getting the overtime, and so that's supplementing them, but is not going to be consistent. And then on the flip side, you have people who've always had the overtime that have supplemented their incomes, and now that's not going to be available. Yeah. I just wonder if people will ever actually look at what your true wage salary is versus just what your taxes.
Well, and what what they do is the reason why they look at annual taxes is because it gives them a broad overview, a big picture, if you will, of income. So if there is, a period of 4 months where somebody's earning more than normal, it kind of averages itself out over the year, which is why they look at tax records for a reason of that. The thought process being if somebody's working, if we take this, let's say this is a 4 month or a 6 month period as an example, if they take that and look at it, they can manage through that, and then versus the next tax filing year. So it gives a bigger picture, which is why they do that. Not obviously ideal for people who, may struggle through portions of that year, but as a whole, as a big picture, it best supports in the long run, I think.
And I'll add that I suspect we're going to get some more help coming out specifically for healthcare workers because of the admittedly slow but dawning realization how crucial folks in that industry are to everyone. And so I think, and this is only a guess, but I feel like there is likely to be some additional kind of assistance that comes out. And I don't know if it's going to be just kind of like discounts on CPAs fees or anything like that, but I think there's likely to be something that will help you navigate this, because this is such a weird bubble for people in healthcare. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled.
Well, and to that end, Emily, you bring up a good point, which is, we've talked a lot about these big programs like the PPP and the EIDL loans and, tax exempt or, tax credits and things of that nature. But there are so many other smaller programs, mortgage assistance programs, there's social security tax credit programs. There's a lot of different programs that as people navigate this, they can tap into as they need. And I do think it's a good idea for people to familiarize themselves with those. You can find them on the COVID site, the government COVID site here in Colorado. And I think, as well, when we get into tax filing season, fast forward, our CPAs will be well versed in how and what to do to support us. And I think, when you're looking at how do I support myself right now and get through this, if it's not unemployment and if it's not one of these bigger loans, then working with your CPA as well on what some other strategies might be, or even you can, absolutely reach out to me and I can support in that as well as can Emily, and just giving you some guidance in terms of the other smaller options you have to kind of give you some support as you wade through this period, if that makes sense.
Yep, thank you.
Yep, you bet. Okay, any other questions that you guys have, or I can bring up, I had a question in regards to furloughs and layoffs, so I kind of want to navigate that unless anybody else has any other questions right off the bat. Perfect, okay. So the question I got was, I have a client who they've been able to navigate the crisis up until this point with their staff, but they're quickly approaching decision time where they've got to decide if they're going to lay off staff or if they're going to furlough. And so their question was, what is the difference? And how do I manage that impact in regards to my business? So, the first thing I'll say is a layoff is exactly that. It's separation of employment. And as such, it allows the employee obviously to be able to file unemployment. It separates employment completely from the company, which also means that the company at that point in time is required to pay all wages. And that would be any type of earned PTO or vacation, as well as final wages at that exact time of separation. So on date of separation, they need to be paying those final wages, which for a lot of businesses can be difficult. It can impact their business from a cash flow standpoint because of the crisis that we're in. So the other option to that is furlough. And a furlough is basically a leave of absence without pay. It's meant to be for a short period of time, but the employee retains employment with that company while they're on furlough and it's unpaid. They are still able to apply for unemployment. They are still able to go out and look for new employment if they so choose, but the expectation is that they return to that company after that furlough is complete and they have a return date. The benefit to the employer at that point is that they're not paying out all of those final wages. So it kind of continues business as normal, but without pay, if that makes sense. So, the business would be required to pay any time that has been worked, but nothing else, if that makes sense. And Emily, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the other benefit to the furlough over the layoff, of course, is your business's reputation. it's a really nice piece that if you can keep people still job attached, even if you're not presently paying them or you're only paying them part-time, because that's really going to solidify the business reputation as ethical, as someplace that's trying very hard to do the right thing in all of this strife and craziness. So there's kind of the spiritual benefit there as well, of kind of really branding yourself as an ethical company. And the good news is for employees, those who are part-time furloughed can in fact apply for unemployment. So even if you drastically cut your staff's hours, they can apply for unemployment benefits as well as part of the COVID stimulus package in a way that doesn't negatively impact your bottom line. So both your staff are getting at least some money coming in, and you're not paying out a big chunk, and you look good when we all go back to working like normal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing I will point out with furloughs is if you furlough an employee, they cannot work during that furlough period. So just make sure that if you have somebody on furlough that they are not working at all, regardless of if they're salaried or hourly status, they cannot work. So just keep that in mind as well. Another of the questions I received prior to this recording was what do they do for their employees that are furloughed? How do they keep a communication system going with them and an engagement going with them? Because it's really hard as business owners. We're stressed out. There's a lot of anxiety around how we're running our businesses. Are our operations sustainable? All of these different pieces. And on top of that, it is, okay, well, I have furloughed employees. Now, how do I keep them engaged so that they actually come back when it's time to bring them back? So I think, understanding that you cannot ask them to work, which there's a fine line between, engagement and work. So what I recommend people do really is just, I call it connection hours. You can call it a happy hour if you want, but connection hour. Oops, did I break up again?
We lost you for a sec.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're talking about connection hours that you can do with employees. And it's not something that you could require to be mandatory. It would have to be voluntary. And it would be, obviously it's just a chance for you guys to get together and say hi and to talk and to be connected. You've got to be careful of that line of what's considered work versus what's not. So if you do a connection hour, it really is just, let's get on and say hi and catch up and see how everybody's doing, make it very simple. But other important things that you can do as an employer for a furloughed employee is communicate with them. So send them updates once a week in terms of the business and where you see things going and where you think you'll be. So is the furlough going to end early? Do you think it's going to be extended a couple weeks or a week? What does that look like? So I think it's just really important to maintain that communication. Emily, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I think the other part of the sort of best practices of this is to be definitely doing some checking in with your furloughed staff, because people are handling this with varying degrees of comfort and grace, and you might have some kind of ideas percolating in the back of your head of ways to support your staff. And I would say in the meantime, be collecting some resources for people who really are struggling with this. So if you can, for example, send out things like some mental health options that are free or low cost for your staff. And a genuine check-in goes a really long way to letting people feel valued and engaged. Phone call, a text, it doesn't really matter as long as you are really kind of keeping that front of mind, which is hard to do with everything going on. So a lot of what I'm going to say is going to sound really basic and obvious, but I'm going to keep saying it because we're all under so much stress right now that I think it gets really easy to shut down a little bit and to think only about what am I going to do. And I think particularly if you stressful, difficult, depressing times.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I completely agree. Anybody have any questions around engagement or, that they've had clients ask or are just curious about?
I have one.
Sure.
So we've had clients that have applied and started to receive PPP money and have furloughed those employees to start when everything kind of happened so that they would be entitled to, start to collect that unemployment. Now that they well, I only have certain amount of money to allocate to X amount of employees. If I only bring back a certain amount, are they still able, because now they're getting, 6, 9, whatever amount in unemployment per week. What does that look like on a furloughed situation? Are they still, if they come back, are they still able to accept unemployment? How do I navigate that conversation?
So Molly, I missed part of it. If you saw me moving, I'm trying to find a spot in my home that will be a little bit more conducive to this Zoom call. But so I may have missed part of your question, but what I think I heard you say is they were given the PPP, they're trying to bring furloughed people back, but how does that impact unemployment is what I understand the question was. So when they bring their employees back, couple things which you may or may not know, I'm sure you do, is with the PPP, you have to maintain a certain percentage in order for it to be 100% forgivable loan. Now, if you don't do that, it doesn't mean that you don't owe all of that. It doesn't become completely unforgivable, but there's portions of that that become unforgivable. So, or unforgivable. So just make sure that your clients understand those specifications or regulations. But then aside from that, once an employee comes back, if they're working part-time hours, they are still eligible for unemployment. It would be similar to the question Emily asked earlier, which is if somebody's working a reduced schedule, how does that impact their unemployment? And when they go to file, and you file weekly, when you file, the system will ask you if you've earned any income for the week, and then you add that information into the system, and then they will calculate a new benefit based on that. So what their eligible benefit is continues, but they subtract what they've earned from that benefit. Does that answer your question or make sense?
Definitely. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, you bet, of course. So I think what I want to do just really quickly, I want to bring up the FFCRA, the Family First Act. I've had a lot of questions over the last couple weeks about that specifically. And without going into, there could be 2 hours just on this alone. But what I want to make sure people understand is that there is a poster that you are required to have posted at this point. So let me know if you need that link and I can get that for you. But also really important to understand that this act, I think people we're still so in the middle of this that we're not, sorry, I have a dog here also. We're so in the middle of this that we don't, we're not always paying attention to what's coming down the pike or what's going to be happening next. And this act actually goes through December of this year. So when things are back to a new sense of normal, when we're reopened and our businesses are going again, it's still going to be important that we understand what this act is and that we know how to utilize it when and if we have employees who are sick or become ill and what that looks like. So there are a couple different pieces to this act. One is an emergency leave, and the other is an extended FMLA leave or family leave. So two of those, one, the emergency leave applies to all employees, and it is basically for the first 10 days that if they're out for a COVID test, if they've been quarantined because of exposure, or something to that nature. If it is their illness, as a company, you're required to pay them for that 2-week period. There are maximum amounts that you then pay up to. I believe it's 500, ends up being a little over 500. I think it's 511 an employee per day, and a total of, I want to say, 10,000 per employee overall. That number might be a little bit off. But so you are required to pay that to your employee through December of 2020. Now, the other piece of it is for people who are unable to work or telework because they have children who are out of school due to daycare closures, or if they have to care for somebody who has been exposed to the disease, or they're a caregiver for the disease. That's a different type of leave extension for this. And as a small business, you may be able to, what's the word I'm looking for? Ask for an exemption from that. You may be exempt from that as a small business with less than 50 employees, but you have to be able to prove that it would be a hardship for your company to support if you did that. So it's important that you have documentation to support that and to prove that if you go down that road. So just make sure that you know that. And then the other pieces that I would just say as an HR professional that you need to be thinking about as we navigate and get back to work is, how are you going to document these leaves? Because you'll need to document them so that you've got proof. And then what proof can you require of your employees? Those are questions that I've been asked. So understand that you should have some form of some document, some form that if an employee feels like they need to leave because of their own exposure or their own illness, there should be a form that they complete for that. Likewise, if they are leaving because they have to care for a child or a daycare has closed or something to that nature. So make sure that you create a form. Obviously, I can support you in doing that if you need it. But make sure you have that ready to go when you are reopening so that as we navigate the next several months, you're ready. And then in terms of what can you ask for in regards to this leave, you absolutely can and should ask for a doctor's note or explanation as to why they're requesting the leave. So if they're, if it's a stay-at-home order, for example, like we have, they would present that. If they're sick and they need to be tested, it would be a doctor's note stating that there is belief that they are COVID positive and they're going out for a test. So you can and should ask for that documentation, and then you should keep that documentation on hand. Similar would go for the childcare as well. So if the daycare is closed, you can ask for documentation in regards to that closure and maintain that. Anything you want to add, Emily, or anybody have any questions in regards to that?
I would add on the employee end, if you are an employee and any of this is true of you, just be very mindful of being very transparent with your employers, because this is all very confusing for everyone.
Yes.
And they can definitely help you navigate it. So definitely just let them know whatever it is that's going on, particularly if you are in a state that has not very well defined stay-home orders. Just have that conversation with your employers so that you know what their expectations are. And then if they need any documentation from you, you should be able to, they should be able to have that discussion with you so that you know what you're going to need to provide for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if as an employer, you have questions as you get into this, by all means, reach out to a professional. There's a lot of what if and if scenarios out there. For example, if we're all on a stay-at-home order right now. So does it apply currently if your employees are staying at home, and what does that look like? And so I have answers to all of those questions, and we can walk much more thoroughly through that if it's something that you need and want for your business. So by all means, feel free to reach out to us. Emily, any other questions that you're receiving at this point?
I did have a couple from folks who are wondering what the actual benefit situation is if they are furloughed versus laid off. And I know that you and I talked a little bit about this, and it's fuzzy, but I thought it would be useful information just to put out there.
Definitely useful information. And I have heard two sides of the story. So it is my understanding that if you are furloughed, you're still employed. So those benefits will continue. That's my understanding. I have heard a couple things opposite that. So I do think it's important, if you have questions on that, to address it with your broker, to really read through your specific benefit detail, so that you understand where you lie. But if you are furloughed, you are technically still an employee, so your benefits should still continue.
That was my understanding too, but it's good to have that
Absolutely.
hopefully borne out a little bit. We'll see.
100%. 100%. Absolutely. I have had some questions that I'll bring up here as well in regards to returning to work and what does that look like. So employers have begun asking me if if we're returning employees to work and they are, afraid to return to work, for one, or if they need an accommodation, if they're part of the vulnerable population, how do we move forward with that? Which are excellent questions. And the first thing I will say is it's super important that you spend some time in the next couple of weeks really looking at, as a business, what your plan is going to be and what your strategy is going to be to navigate these things, because they absolutely will come up. You 100% are going to have employees who are scared of returning to work, and you're going to have employees who are compromised and afraid of coming to work for that reason. So I think absolutely there are things you can do to address that. One of those things would be, really letting your staff know what measures you've taken to ensure that the environment is safe. So what does your social distancing look like at work? So from a desk standpoint, where are their desks located? Are they 6 feet apart? Are they 8 feet apart? Are they 10 feet apart? A mask policy and having masks when you come into the office or when you come into work. Temperature checks, which will be acceptable as we move forward for the short term. Things like that are, I think, what you want to start considering for your business. What does that look like? If you're a restaurant and you have menus, how are you going to manage menus? So what's your cleaning process going to be? What's your sterilization process going to be when you're dealing with that? So that, when you have clients or customers that come in, and they have concerns over that, are they getting a new paper menu every time? Or, it's these type of things I think we want to start looking at to start ensuring that our customers, our employees, our customers and vendors are comfortable in the environment that we have. So what sort of cleaning procedures are you going to put in place? How are you going to amp up your sterilization or your cleaning procedures, strategies, processes? All of these things are things we want to consider.
And I would add, begin drafting policies as well for your organization about what you are going to do with employees who are either immunocompromised themselves or who have immediate family members who are. Because this is going to be a very real issue for them, and they are likely not to be comfortable going back into the physical workplace until there is widely available testing. And so you're going to want to have some kind of policies in place for that. What kind of proof do your employees need to provide? And I mean, do they even need to provide proof? Because maybe they're just really anxious about it, and just kind of be really starting to think through official policies and be sure you're being very transparent with your remaining staff, because they are really wondering this as well. So talk among yourselves as the leadership team, but also do let people know that it is something that you are discussing, and that you let them know as soon as you actually have a policy in place, and then send that out to them as quickly as you can.
Absolutely. And that's an excellent point. And it really does fall onto, you get into things like the ADA when you start talking about what's going to happen with this compromised community that we still will have and still need to be very mindful of, and how that impacts what you do at work. And I would say if you have the ability to telework, as many people do, then I would allow that as an opportunity, and make sure that if you have somebody who's compromised or who is concerned, that you walk through, there's a process that you walk through with the ADA to determine accommodation and what that may look like. So make sure you're walking through that process, and that you are getting to the answers that work for everybody. So really, really important that you follow that, and that you sit down and understand from your employees what they need and what you are able as an employer to provide them. Really, really important. And again, I think teleworking is, if possible, is a great strategy to support these immunocompromised folks that are still going to be, in need of some different strategies or processes to help them through.
And reach out to the ADA as well if you have questions, because the danger is that there is something that is stigmatizing with those staff, which would of course be a violation of ADA. And so you also want to be very sure that you are not kind of putting too much information out there about who's allowed to telework and who isn't. So it's not, people can't be like, oh, what's wrong with you? So we want to be really clear about kind of what the policies are and what the rules are, and what is acceptable under ADA and under non-discrimination policies as well.
And that's a really important piece. I cannot say enough how important confidentiality is and maintaining that with all of your employees. And nobody should know at any point in time, who has what or what's going. I mean, it's need to know basis when you're dealing with these type of situations. So it's super important that we keep confidentiality top of mind when we're adjusting and managing through these situations. Anybody have any questions in regards to any of that we discussed, or any other questions that you want to ask? Okay, so I think we're good. Oh, Tanya, you have a question?
Sorry, I was trying to get my mouse over to the area. But so are you going to provide information for folks that maybe weren't on the call on where to go to file within this new site?
The unemployment?
Yeah, for the PUA.
Yeah, I absolutely can. Yeah, if you let me know, Tanya. There's so much information. I am happy to put it out there. I just need to know who needs to see it or where I can best get it to them, and I can get them all of that information. Does it help? Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, I know what it is. I just wondered if it was going to be provided to people that may have missed the call.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll put together a quick tip sheet for unemployment and the PUC. So I'll put that together and I'll make that available on social media and LinkedIn and all those different places.
And I can attach it when I send this out through YouTube and that sort of thing as well.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thanks.
Perfect. Good question. Anything else from anybody else? We've got about 8 minutes left. So what we'll do, Emily and I, we'll save the recording. We can attach some of those documents and send out with that recording as well. And as I've said, and I will continue to say, if you have folks, friends, business owners that have questions, by all means have them reach out to us. I want to make sure that we're supporting business owners, and there is so much information. It's like drinking from a fire hose, and I get it. As a small business owner myself, I get trying to decipher all of that and still manage your business. So I really just want to make my services available, as I know Emily does as well.
Absolutely.
It's just supporting people and answering their questions and being available. So have them reach out to us, have them call us, continue to reach out to me with questions when you have them. And, we may try to do this when we get a little bit farther down the road and really talk strategies, do this again, really talk strategies about how do we reopen and what does that look like? So stay tuned for that, but might be something that is beneficial for everybody as we get a little bit farther down the road.
And I'll add, particularly for small business owners or just business operators, people who are operations managers and that kind of thing, because everything is so hard for everyone right now, I would say just be really mindful of practicing your own self-care as well, because with that drinking from the fire hose piece, I think it's really hard for a lot of us to maintain kind of a balance of things. And so you're going to have days where you just hit the wall, and that is fine. When you do that, when you're just kind of at the end of your rope, just back away. You also are allowed to have a day when you lie on the couch and watch stupid TV and eat Fritos all day. And I think that's the other part. There's kind of an acute self-care that I'm a huge believer in, which isn't the stuff about like waking up to an alarm and exercising and eating salads. The acute self-care to me is like bubble baths and hot chocolate, spiked or not. That stuff that's just going to make you feel better in the moment, because particularly business owners and people who are part of the gig economy are doing a lot of heavy lifting right now. And I think it's just exhausting for all of us. So let me know if you need some tips on that. I have loads of like meditations and things like that I am more than glad to send out.
I'm so glad you said that, Emily. And it really is so true. I mean, you know, as a business owner, we are trained and taught, I think, to go 190 miles an hour all day, every day.
Nonstop.
And I think when we hit things like this crisis and there is uncertainty and the lack of control, it is a very hard place as an entrepreneur, as a business owner to be. It's just hard to sit with ourselves because we feel like we need to fix everything and make it better for ourselves and make it better for the people that we employ and the people that we support. And we can't do that if we go 190 miles an hour all the time. So I think it is super important, to Emily's point, that you really do take the time to assess where you're at and to be down if you need to be down. And I think sharing that with employees as well. If you have, you know, employees who are teleworking from home, which is not something we talked about, but if you have employees teleworking from home, you know, they do look to you for answers, but they also look to you as kind of a voice of reason. And it's okay to say, this is hard. And I need, you know, we need a down day, or let's just take a minute and take a breath. It's okay for them to see that human side of you. And I think from, you know, just from a authentic self, I think it is, you know, beneficial for employees to understand that you're in the same boat they are. We're all moving through this crisis the best we can. We all have anxiety. We all have stress. We all are scared and have concerns about how we move forward and what that looks like. So knowing that, I think we're all in the same boat together is actually half the battle in supporting the process of moving forward and being productive and being efficient and effective in what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll add a little very specific addendum here as well. If you, as an employer, happen to know that you have employees who are on the autism spectrum, I would say be a little bit extra mindful of them. I have a number of clients who are neurodiverse, and this is hitting them harder than my non-spectrum client. So just kind of a specific note of caution there, that those are folks who probably need a tiny bit more caretaking as we go through this. And you can find some resources online for how to deal with it as well, and how to make those particular folks feel a little more comfortable with all of this.
Perfect. Okay. If nobody has any other questions, we can end, but we've got a couple more minutes available. So if you do have questions, by all means, feel free to ask, and we are happy to answer. And if not,
I'm good, but thank you very much for putting this call together. Very informational.
good. I
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Tanya.
Thank you for joining. I've got something.
Yes.
This is Molly saying thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yes, you're so welcome. I hope it was helpful for everybody. And like I said, Emily and I will maybe try to do this again in a couple weeks, just to go a little bit further on the how do we move forward piece of this. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We'll send out the link once we get it. I'll put together the tip sheet for the unemployment, Tanya, and we'll attach that. And I just wish you guys all well, stay healthy. Let me know if you have questions, and we'll talk to everybody again soon.
Thanks to all of you for joining us.
Guys, take care,
Thank you.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.